Welcome back, everyone. Super excited to be back once again, joined by Coach Roy as co-host. Today we have Steve Langevin, the head coach of the Pembroke girls basketball team. Welcome. Thanks for coming
Thank you.
on.
Oh, thanks
Welcome.
to get to you and Pat both.
Yeah, good to see you, Steve. Been a little while. I guess I'll get us rolling, Drew. Steve, prior to Pembroke, a lot of people in the area may not be aware of this, but you were coaching down at Spalding in Rochester. We played a couple times there in the off season. That was always fun. So talk a little bit about switching divisions. I mean, I knew you were very familiar with Pembroke, the school, but new opponents, new rivalries, that kind of thing.
Well, the year before I was at Spalding, I was actually at Pittsfield, so that was D4. So
There you
I've
go.
been
You've been all
in
over,
most every division except for three. But yeah, at Spalding, we were D1 for a couple of years, and then we had petitioned down because before I got there, they had really struggled. And so we played a couple of years in D1, and then we were down in D2 for a couple of years also. It's just learning all the new people, how each team plays, and thank God for Huddle and things like that nowadays, because you can get so much information out there that you used to have to drive all over the state to try to see people play. We use that, a ton in our practices, trying to get ready for different games.
Yeah, well, we have had a great run, with Hopkinton and Pembroke. We've had some classic games, heart attack games, actually, several overtimes. I remember even during COVID with no fans, we had an overtime game at your place when Morgan McGrath hit that three-pointer with 2 seconds to go to send us into overtime.
Yeah, sure. Just remind me, Field.
Yeah. Well, I got a better memory for you. You came to our place and during the Christmas tournament, and we played our best half of the entire season. We were up 20-something at half, and you guys came all the way back. And that one ended up being a double overtime. And so we had some great games, very close games. And that leads me to a question about your current team. You've played the top three teams in the standings, all on the road, and all close games, one win and two losses. How do you prepare your kids to play in games like that, overtime games, and where execution is so important at the end and understanding time and score? How do you incorporate that into your practices and teaching?
Well, actually, our first game of the year surpassed our game. We went into triple overtime with Derek Field. That was my first ever. We had done the double with you and a couple other times, but never done triple before. So, and that was our season opener. So, for that game, it was just great because some of our bench kids, we had lost some people to fouls as we went along, and some of our young kids that were going to be kind of important parts of our rotation this year had to kind of take over in overtime, and it was a great growing experience for them. In practices, sometimes we'll put a couple of minutes on the clock and say, hey, you're up two, you're down two, and have them work out the different situations. They foul all the time, except at the end when you really want them to, when you're down, and, you try to get them not to foul all game. And then when you need them to foul, it's a hard thing for them to do. Anywhere I've been, that seems to always be, something that's hard for them. So you do have to practice it, but they still have to do it in the actual games to really get how it works. We have the idea of how to do things. We'll work on holding the ball if we get up by enough, and we've been pretty good at that. And this year we've been a little better at fouling. We don't want to be in that position where we're behind at the end, but when we've had that spot, we've done much better in that situation. So pretty happy with how they've done.
Looking at your schedule, having played those three particular teams, two of whom are still undefeated, close games had to be a tremendous learning experience for you. You mentioned you have some younger kids. Going through that and living with the tension and the key possessions and things must have been quite the learning experience for your team.
Oh, this year in D2, it's pretty amazing. There's at least the top seven, and can all beat everybody any night, and all the games have been super tight. By the end of our season, we're going to have at least 8 tournament games, getting ready for the tournament. Right. And there's teams just below that are dangerous that you have to play well to come out on top too. So there's a lot of very competitive games this year. I think everybody's going to be pretty tourney tested when they get to the tournament. It's there's no real standout team. I know there's two undefeated teams, but there's nobody way up and above everybody else. Everybody is pretty even, and it just makes for a lot of great games. You know, going into every single game, it's going to be tight. And I have to thank Fred for this one. You know, all of our athletic director, all of our top whatever teams are all on the road this year.
Yeah. Well, it's a great learning experience.
I thanked him for that the other day and said, well, next year we'll get the revenge on that. But
well, there must have been some pressure when you saw that Drew Dumont picked you number 2. You must have felt some pressure there in the preseason. I'm only kidding. Drew, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Okay. Yeah, glad to have you on, Coach. I got to see you one time this year. I know you played against Hopkinton in the Christmas tournament. You guys look super sharp. I want to talk a little bit about last season because you obviously had a really strong team last year. I got to watch your championship game against Concord Christian. You guys played really well against a really good CCA team. Unfortunately, for you guys, they came out on top, but you guys look super strong this year, and they're moved up to Division One. But you had like Annalise Dexter, Taylor Renna, who I think she's playing up in Maine now, and then you have Caitlin back this year. But you guys have played super well this season, considering all that you've lost. What was your message to your team over the offseason and your planning to make up for those losses?
Well, we aren't really trying to make up for them. We just try to play as a group all the time. Nobody's going to go out and be Annalise, scoring 30 points a game or whatever. But we kind of do it more as a team. It's how we were playing the majority of last year. We kind of lost our way in the middle a little bit, and we kind of right before tournament we scrapped everything and started all over again with our offense, and just got back to moving the ball and finding the open people, and put it back together for the tournament last year. And that's just kind of how we play. We try to find the open person. The kids are super unselfish. They're not worried about how much they're scoring, and we move the ball really well. And we have a lot of different weapons that can all score in different ways. So it's a lot of fun when we get going. It's a lot of fun to watch us play.
I'm going to follow up with that and have you talk a little bit more specifically about your starting 5 and the different roles each of those girls play.
Sure. Well, Ann Phillips is our point guard. We're playing 5 out almost all the time against man. So after it gets up the court, it doesn't really matter who's where. But she can drive. She can take her threes have improved a lot. She's got a lot of intermediate game now that she didn't have in the past. Her quickness is there. We have Kate Stevens, who's really took a big step up this year. It was kind of started the end of last year. We'd seen it the summer before, but I don't know if she was deferring to Annalise a little bit or whatever, but she's really stepped up and been a consistent force for us this year, going to the hole and getting her own shots, and just her movement off the ball is great. Caitlin is kind of our anchor on defense. It's the only real size we have, and has had some big rebounding games against some girls that are much taller than she is, and she brings the outside game. Everybody says, "Oh, she's a big girl. She's going to be inside posting up." Well, she's got she goes to the outside and she can drive, and they're all kind of varied in that way. And Haley Steinmetz is, especially against zones, is really integral to us. Playing the middle of the zone and getting everybody set up. She's also really good at going to the hole and making the cuts and things like that too. And Bailey Gatchell's our other one. She's a senior. She's kind of our defensive stopper. She allows us to not have to put Kate or Ann on the best player all the time, so that they aren't getting worn out or they aren't getting fouls right away. So we took her as a freshman, kind of as a project. She's a super athlete with soccer, but she hadn't really had much basketball training. And I pulled her aside this year and said, "You've become a basketball player now." She gets everything. She's very unselfish. She'll go set screens. She kind of knows her role. She'll get her intermediate shots and go to the hoop and stuff like that. But so we have a good little mix. Everybody can kind of do everything, but they all have their little strengths as well.
You guys currently sit at 6-3 against the really strong, top-heavy Division II. I think you have to be mostly proud of where you've gotten. I would say there's obviously a lot of teams up there. Dairyfield, Laconia, Oyster River looking here. Milford, expected them to be very good this year. Bow, Merrimack Valley, so local rivals as well. Talk a little bit about the competition in the division and the things that you guys think you need to do the best in order to win some tournament games here coming up.
Well, even because we're doubled up with a couple of our local teams with Bow and MV, we're kind of doing different things each time we played them, trying things out, to see what's going to work best. Because we may meet them a third or fourth time. We just played Bow in the Christmas tournament too, so we could play them 4 times potentially this year. So we're trying things a little bit differently to see what works, and every team is different, so we have to have little different strategies against them. But we kind of play our game. We try to get it up the court and get easy shots if we can. If not, move it around and just work on our defense. We try to score in all different ways, not just running the ball. But we try to take advantage of that if we can with pressing and everything else. So there's some teams that are just super quick and it's hard to trap them, and there's some teams that are a lot bigger that we have to figure out ways of stopping that. So the day before any game, we kind of go over exactly what they do. Sometimes we learn how to run their offense, like we did when we had playing against Sir Patrick there. We would sit in practice. I taught them how to run his offense so they'd understand it better, so they could figure out how to stop it. And they're just really smart. They're getting smarter and smarter now. When I show them something, they can point out, hey, we should try this and we should try that, and no, that's not working. And they're just picking up the basketball IQ really quickly, which is pretty exciting to watch them doing it now, instead of me having to tell them everything we're going to try to do.
I really like the strategy that you've implemented. I think it makes for a very entertaining brand of basketball. Coach Roy, I'll go to you.
So I know that you have your hands full getting ready. You've got MV 2 more times. You mentioned you're going to play Bow again, and there's no easy real cupcakes in Division 2, it looks like, this year. But in the back of your mind, you've got to be looking at getting ready for the state tournament. All coaches will say, well, we take them one game at a time. But in the back of your mind, I know well enough that, you're thinking about a couple things. As you prepare your team, Steve, for tournament play, regardless of the draw, because the draw will affect how you prepare, but this time of year, what are you really trying to tighten up now with your team so that you're playing your absolute best basketball the end of February?
Well, this year, after the Christmas tournament, we really decided to try to crack down on our defense. It's just trying to close up little holes that we have in our own, that we, kind of like self-scouting, and figure out some things that we're getting hurt and how we can stop that. And sometimes we fix one thing and it causes another problem. We really worked on our help defense, and then we played Pelham, and they were doing all these back cuts on us because they were in great position to help, but they had kind of forgot to look over the shoulder to see where their person was all the time. But we could deal with that because they were doing what we were practicing. The good part is that we feel we're good enough that we know we're going to be in the tournament, so we can really be working on things. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the main thing, is the defensive part. Last year we kind of had to redo our offense, but this year it's more we score pretty well most of the time. We go in our droughts like everybody else, but we're really trying to clean up our defense a little bit.
Yeah. This is something I asked Jim Silly when he was on. I was very fortunate in some of the places where I coached that the boys and girls programs melded together to become one program. We were Campbell basketball, Hopkins basketball. Talk a little bit about working with, you have Jim and Mike available, experienced coaches there, and you guys cross paths every day at practice. Talk a little bit about how your program works together with the boys program.
Oh, we have communication every day. Like you said, Mike and I both work in the building. So, after every game, we always go and check in with each other and see, because we never get to see each other play, or very rarely. So we kind of just see how things are going. In the summer, he runs a summer camp where he does it for both the boys and the girls. We kind of run our own program throughout the summer as well. So it's, we're always talking and just trying to keep both abreast on how we're doing and what things are working and things like that. So.
Yeah,
unfortunately, we don't get to see each other, so we don't get to go support them very much, and the other way around. I know if we have a game that we start a little bit early and we're away, the girls always want to go home with their parents that day because they want to rush back to catch even the last quarter of their half of a quarter of the boys' game. So.
Yeah, we were very fortunate at Hopkinton that we were able to set up some double headers And that helped a lot. The kids got to see each other play, once or twice a year, which was good. It does build a camaraderie, and support between the two programs. Just to piggyback a little bit on one of Drew's questions, in Division II, in the greater Concord area, you've got quite a few schools and natural rivalries. You're close to MB. You've got John Stark, Bishop Brady, Co Brown. Everybody seems to be in a 25-minute radius there. Is that a positive? Does that make games feel a little more special when you're playing a local team?
Oh, it makes it tough as much as we play them, because we play them all in the Christmas tournament too. So you just know everything what each other does. Even just from playing against you, we were scrimmaging every year, which was a lot of fun, and you kind of learn what the other team's going to do. So if they call out a name, we already know what they're going into. So it makes it tougher in that way. You're not going to surprise anybody very often. So it's just who's going to execute better on that day. But it definitely makes for pretty intense games, because sometimes it carries over from other sports as well. So,
well, I got a real sense for that during the COVID year, because we were all in the same cluster, and I'd go to play Co Brown, and he'd say, "Who do you got next?" I go, "I got Pembroke." "Oh, Steve's going to do this to you." So it was very helpful for me scouting wise during the COVID year, but. I got a sense for how well everybody knows each other, and I think that can really build meaning to the games. You can always go back to, remember last year we were 6-2 and they upset us, and that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's really nice. A lot better than being out on the seacoast and playing in Division I, and you got the long bus rides. You mentioned tightening up your defense with this group. Would you say that the upcoming teams you're going to have to see in the tournament are very strong offensive teams this year? There seems to be a pattern. Division III this year, great guard play. Would you say that the offenses are stronger this year in Division II?
I think a lot of teams they've had a big uptick in their scoring. Some freshmen have come in that have really taken charge of their teams, or certainly helped their teams a lot. And there's a lot of scoring. There's a lot of up-tempo play, which is a lot of fun. Yeah. But everybody gets after it pretty good on defense. It's not just kind of free roaming. It's just there's a lot of skilled players right now, and girls that can shoot. And that's one of the bigger differences from some of the other divisions. That each division you move up, you get more and more shooters on some of the teams. You can't say, don't worry about that person. You have to really worry about everybody and kind of pick your poison a little bit. You try to take away one thing and it leaves something else. So, but it's a pretty, it's a wide open division. There's a lot of athleticism. The game's not boring for people that come to watch. And they've been so close. Teams will get down 14 and they come back and win. And it always seems everything seems to always meet at the end, even if somebody gets way up or way down. By the end of the game, it's tight again. So,
True.
There's a big game coming up tomorrow night for you guys, Merrimack Valley. Was just going to have you preview that a little bit and discuss your matchup and your expectations for what that game's going to bring.
Every time we've played them so many times the last few years, either we usually draw them in the tournament or the Christmas tournament, plus twice a year too, and we see them in the summer. So we're very familiar with all their players, and they're very familiar with ours. They do a little bit of everything. They do a full court press. They do a half court press. They have a very good post player in Kayla inside. It makes it's very tough for us to stop. They're just super athletic, and we have to just match their intensity and just stay steady throughout the game. So when there's runs up and down, we can keep on going. We just handle their different pressures. We've seen them all, so we know what's coming. It's just like we talked about, executing against it and trying to get our own stuff going. He'll play some man, he'll play some matchup zone, he'll play some zone. So we have to kind of be prepared for a lot of things.
This division is very brutal. Obviously, we've talked about at length how many challenging opponents you guys have. What are the key things that you need to really nail down and continue to do well these last few weeks as we head towards the tournament in order to get that home game in the first round, maybe have a chance at a home game in the second round, and really just have a team that's really gelling well together and operating well headed into the tournament?
And we're trying to. The other thing is trying to knock down our foul trouble. It just that most of the games we've lost is because we had gotten some early trouble, and it's not. It's not. They'll get like one bad foul with the one that they didn't really have to get, and then you're going to get fouls in the game that there's not much you can do about it. People come in, make contact with you, and it's just trying to get the discipline not to get those fouls that you'd rather not see them get, the lazy fouls type of thing. That's one thing we definitely want to take care of, and just keep the ball moving. When we're moving and looking up the court, we play a lot better. If we slow down, we kind of if we get bogged down, which is not very often, we will struggle more. So, one of the bowl game recently, we just couldn't make our shots the fourth quarter. We got the shots we wanted, and that's nothing you can do about that. You go out and execute your plays and your offense, and you hope the ball falls. Some days it does, some days it doesn't. So it's just we're keeping up with our flow. We we talk about playing in a flow all the time, and that's what we really do. We don't really run a play. We've just kind of taught them how to play basketball, and so that they can. It's harder to scout us because they don't know exactly what we're gonna do. We don't run a set play, so it's just trying to keep all that movement going and just staying clean in foul trouble so that we can keep everybody on the court.
Last thing I wanted to ask you, Coach, just you've been through a lot of these tournaments before at the end of a long regular season. Big picture wise, what do you note mentally about this upcoming tournament? Obviously, we still have a few weeks to go till we get the bracket, but just in general, the way the scope of the division looks and your expectations for what that's going to mean tournament wise, whether it be a lot more guard play than we normally get, maybe some upsets on the road, something like that.
There's just so many teams. Like I said, there's at least 7 that I kind of before the season thought were going to be really strong. And then there's other teams that are just, you don't really enjoy seeing them. You hope that you have a good game against them because you know that they can sneak up and take you down. So I see the tournament being just like the season's been. There's been so many tight games that going in some seasons you kind of have some games you feel pretty good about, and this year it's like almost every game is like, well, we'll see what happens. It's not having lack of confidence in your team, but you just know it's going to be a tight game. So I think the tournament is going to be incredible. If we had triple overtime our first game of the year, I can see a lot more overtimes and 1 or 2 point games like there's already been. I can see just a ton of those in the tournament. It should be a lot of fun.
Coach Roy, you got anything?
Just, I don't know if you want to answer this on a YouTube interview, Steve, but in Division III, boys and girls, one of the things the one place you never wanted to go was to go to Jaffrey in the first round. You didn't want to go to Conant, whether it was boys or girls. It's just a difficult place to play. And I know in the past, as a boys coach, we would go over to Pelham. That's kind of a dicey place to go to sometimes too. Is there somewhere you'd really want to avoid going in the tournament? Is there one gym or one place that's a graveyard for Pembroke in the past? Or
well, the good part is we're going to have played at all of them this year the way it's going. So we'll have already been there. There's definitely some gyms that are tougher to play in. We've had tough games at Co-Brown, and Milford's tough to play at. Pelham has been tough in the past to play at. So, but yeah, our girls aren't too bothered by where they're playing. They just kind of go out and play, which is great. I know some teams really go up or down depending on whether they're home or away, but we're pretty even keeled all the time. So being away doesn't really bother us that much. So it's more just how we happen to play that night. It's not the atmosphere. It's not the environment.
Yeah, I think the road games against the top teams in the long run are going to help you out a lot, going forward. So that's good stuff. That was a very political answer. Good job.
Thanks.
I'm good, Drew.
I am as well. Thanks so much for joining us today, Coach.
Steve,
Really
good
had a
to
lot
see
of
you,
fun.
buddy. Good luck.
Yeah, great to see you too. Thank you very much for having me on.
Please subscribe to the channel. It helps out a bunch and is completely free. Thank you.